My name is Elias Rowe, and I grew up on a colony called Meridian's Rest. I was 34 years old when the sky turned strange, and I still remember every second of that day, because it was the day the galaxy learned something about us that they should have already known. Let me start from the beginning, so you understand what kind of place we were before anyone came to change it. Meridian's Rest was not a military world. It was not a trading hub, not a mining colony, not a place that mattered on any strategic map. We had wheat fields that stretched to the horizon, golden and endless, moving like slow waves whenever the wind passed through them. We had small towns with white fences and red rooftops, and a single winding river that cut through the valley like a silver ribbon. Children rode bicycles down dirt roads. Old men sat outside the general store and talked about the weather. It was quiet. It was simple. It was, by every definition the galaxy understood, peaceful. We had chosen this world for exactly that reason. My grandparents were among the first settlers, and they used to say that Earth had seen enough noise, enough fighting, enough loss. They wanted a place where their children could grow old without knowing what a siren sounded like. So they built Meridian's Rest, far from any major trade route, far from any border dispute, far from anywhere the wider galaxy would ever think to look. For 60 years, nothing happened. We farmed. We built schools. We held festivals every autumn when the wheat turned gold. I was born there, raised there, and until the day everything changed, I believed we were simply forgotten by the universe, and that this was a gift. There was one thing on our colony that always struck visitors as strange. At the edge of town, on a small grassy hill, there stood a large stone structure that we simply called the monument. It had no plaques, no names, no dates. It was just smooth gray stone, shaped like a rounded dome, half sunken into the earth, with a single sealed door on its northern side. Children played on top of it. Teenagers carved their initials into the moss that grew along its base. Nobody thought much about it. It was just part of the landscape, like the river or the hills. My father used to tell me not to go near the door. He never explained why. I assumed it was just an old, unused building, maybe a leftover storage unit from the first settlers. I never once imagined what it truly was. That is, until the ships came. It happened on a warm afternoon in early autumn, right in the middle of harvest season. I was in the east field with my neighbor Thomas, loading sacks of grain onto a cart, when the sky above us seemed to ripple, like someone had disturbed the surface of still water. Then, 3 enormous shapes appeared, hanging silently above the clouds. They were dark, angular, and massive, throwing long shadows across the fields. For a moment, nobody moved. Even the birds stopped singing. Then a voice came from the sky, deep and layered, speaking through some kind of translation device. It called itself the voice of the Halvex Dominion, a coalition that controlled several systems on the far edge of known space. It said that Meridian's Rest had been chosen as an example. It said that Earth and its allies had refused certain demands made by the Dominion, and that this colony, being undefended and insignificant, would serve as a message. It said we should not resist, because resistance would be pointless. It said we were farmers, not soldiers, and that our lives would be spared if we simply surrendered our world. I remember feeling my heart pound so hard I thought Thomas could hear it. I remember looking around at the fields, at the wheat swaying gently in the wind, completely unaware that anything was wrong. And then I noticed something strange. Nobody was screaming. In the town square, when I finally made my way back with Thomas, I expected to see chaos. I expected people running, crying, calling for help that would never arrive in time. Instead, I saw something I will never forget for the rest of my life. I saw calm. Mrs. Alden, who ran the bakery, was closing her shop with slow, steady hands, checking the lock twice, as if this were any other evening. Old Mr. Whitfield, who I had only ever seen sitting on his porch, was walking briskly toward the town hall with a straight back and a focused expression I had never seen on him before. Even the children, though confused, were being gathered by their parents with quiet efficiency, not panic. I turned to Thomas, my voice shaking. "Why isn't anyone scared?" He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that I did not recognize. It wasn't fear. It wasn't excitement either. It was readiness. "Elias, Harry," he said quietly, "go find your father. Now." I ran. I found my father standing outside our house, staring up at the ships with an expression of quiet, controlled anger, the kind of anger that does not shout, but simply waits. When he saw me, he grabbed my shoulder and looked me directly in the eyes. "It's time you knew the truth about this place," he said. He led me to the monument on the hill. As we approached, I saw others gathering there too. Dozens of them, then hundreds, all moving with the same strange calm I had seen in the town square. My father placed his hand on a small hidden panel near the sealed door, one I had never noticed before, despite passing this monument my entire life. The door responded to his touch, and with a low groan, it opened. Inside was not a storage room. It was a command center. Rows of dormant machinery lined the walls, humming softly as ancient systems began to wake for the first time in decades. Screens flickered to life, displaying maps, schematics, and status reports written in a language I recognized but had never learned to read fluently, an old military code from Earth's past. Your grandparents were not just settlers, my father said. They were soldiers first. Every single one of the original colonists who founded Meridian's Rest served in the Unity conflict, the last great war Earth fought before deciding, together, that peace was worth fighting for. They came here not because they were incapable of defending themselves, but because they had already given enough of their lives to conflict. They wanted their children to never need these skills. I stared at the machinery, at the maps, at the quiet, purposeful movement of people I had known my entire life as bakers and farmers and teachers. But they never forgot how, my father continued, and neither did we. Every person over the age of 18 on this colony has been trained, quietly, generation after generation, not to start a fight, but to make sure that if one ever came to our door, we would not be the victims the galaxy assumed us to be. Outside, the voice from the ship spoke again, growing impatient, demanding an answer. My father looked at me, and for the first time, I understood the true nature of the calm I had seen in town. It wasn't the calm of people who had nothing to lose. It was the calm of people who had already decided, long ago, exactly what they would do if this moment ever came. The response our colony gave was not chaos, it was not rage. It was something far more effective, precise, and controlled, something the Halvex Dominion clearly did not expect from a world they had studied and dismissed as harmless. Within minutes, our long-dormant planetary defense grid began to hum to life beneath the fields, hidden under decades of wheat and soil, disguised as simple irrigation systems and storage silos, systems that had been maintained quietly, generation after generation, without ever being used, activated with a low, steady thrum that I felt more than heard. The Dominion ships responded to this sudden activity by moving closer, clearly intending to intimidate us into submission. Instead, our shields rose silently around the town, invisible until the moment their scanning beams struck them and scattered harmlessly into the sky. I watched from the hill as their sensors no doubt screamed warnings to their commanders that something was very wrong with their intelligence reports. My father activated a communication channel, calm and steady, his voice carrying none of the fear I still felt in my chest. "This is Meridian's Rest," he said. "You were told this colony was undefended. That information was incorrect. We ask you to withdraw peacefully. We have no wish for further conflict, and we will not be the ones to start it. But we will not be taken either." There was a long pause. I imagined, somewhere above us, alien commanders staring at their monitors in confusion, trying to reconcile the peaceful farming world they had studied with the sudden, overwhelming presence now surrounding their ships. The voice from the Dominion returned, sharper now, laced with disbelief. "Your colony records show no military history, no defense installations, no weapons registry." "That's correct," my father replied. "We never registered any of it, because we never intended to use it. We hoped, sincerely, that we never would have to. You forced our hand." Around me, on the hill, dozens of colonists worked with quiet precision at stations I had never known existed, monitoring the ships, tracking their movements, preparing countermeasures that were designed not to destroy but to disable, to ground, to neutralize without needless loss. I realized, watching them, that this was not the first time they had trained for this moment. It was simply the first time they had needed to use it. Thomas appeared beside me on the hill, his usual easygoing expression replaced by focused determination. "You all right?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "I had no idea any of this was real." He gave a small, tired smile. "None of us wanted you to. We wanted you to grow up thinking the wheat fields were all there was to this place. That was the whole point of coming here." Above us, the Dominion ships began to maneuver, clearly searching for a way to assert dominance without triggering whatever countermeasures our shields represented. One of the smaller vessels broke formation and descended toward the town, likely intending to land troops and force a resolution on the ground. Our response was immediate, but not aggressive. A soft hum rippled across the valley as an interception field engaged, and the descending ship found itself gently but firmly redirected, its engines struggling against an invisible current that guided it toward an open field rather than the town center. I watched as it touched down, awkward and undignified, far from where it had intended to land, its crew no doubt stunned by a technology far more advanced than anything they expected from a primitive agricultural colony. My father spoke again into the communication channel. That was a warning, not an attack. Nobody has been harmed. We are asking you, one more time, to stand down and leave this system. We do not want a battle. We never have. But we are not the easy target you believed us to be. For a long moment, silence stretched across the valley, broken only by the wind moving through the wheat fields, indifferent to the tension hanging in the air. Then, the lead Dominion ship, the largest of the three, opened a new channel, and a different voice spoke. Older, more measured, clearly someone of higher authority than the one who had first addressed us. This is Commander Vesic of the Halvex Dominion Fleet. I request a formal parley. Your colony's defense capability was severely misjudged by our intelligence division. I wish to understand who we are truly speaking with. My father glanced around at the assembled colonists, then back toward the sky. Very well, Commander. Land your shuttle in the field to the east. Come with no more than 3 others and come unarmed. You will not be harmed if you honor these terms. There was a pause before the commander responded. Agreed. I watched, heart still racing, as a small shuttle detached from the main vessel and descended toward the field my father had indicated. My father turned to me, his expression softer now, though still alert. Come with me, he said. It's time you saw how this ends. We walked down from the hill together, joined by a handful of other colonists, including Thomas and Mrs. Alden, who I had last seen calmly locking her bakery only an hour before. She now carried herself with the same quiet authority as everyone else, and I realized that the woman who sold me bread every week had likely trained for moments like this long before I was even born. The shuttle landed softly in the field, crushing a small patch of wheat beneath it. Its door opened, releasing a low hiss of pressurized air, and 4 figures stepped out. They were tall, gray-skinned, with elongated limbs and deep-set eyes that reflected the afternoon light strangely. Commander Vesic, I assumed, stood at the front, his posture rigid, clearly unaccustomed to being on the losing side of a negotiation. He studied us for a long moment, his gaze moving across the assembled colonists, farmers, bakers, teachers, all standing with the same calm readiness that had confused his forces from the very beginning. You are not what our reports described, he said finally, his translated voice carrying a note of genuine confusion. We are exactly what your reports described, my father replied. Farmers, families, a peaceful colony that wanted nothing more than to be left alone. What your reports failed to mention, because we made sure they never could, is that peace was a choice we made, not a limitation we were born with. Vesic's eyes narrowed slightly. Explain. My father gestured toward the fields around us. Every person who settled this world was once a soldier. We fought a war on Earth that nearly destroyed us, a war that taught us exactly what conflict costs. When it ended, we made a decision. We would carry the knowledge of defense with us, always, but we would never again seek to use it unless someone forced our hand. We came here to raise children who would never need to fight. We did not come here because we were weak. We came here because we were tired of being strong in the wrong way. Vesic was silent for a long moment, processing this. Around him, his 3 companions exchanged uncertain glances, clearly unsettled by the calm, unwavering resolve radiating from every colonist present. Our intelligence suggested an easy demonstration, Vesic finally admitted. A show of force against an undefended population, meant to send a message to Earth's allies, without risking significant losses. We were told this world posed no threat. You were told wrong, my father said simply. And now you understand why. Vesic studied him for a long moment, then looked around at the fields, the town in the distance, the quiet strength radiating from every person present. What do you propose? You leave, my father said, peacefully. You report back to your Dominion that Meridian's Rest is not the target you believed it to be. You tell them that this colony, and likely many others like it across human space, are not the soft, defenseless worlds your reports suggest. We do not wish for war, Commander. We have already lived through one. But we will not be intimidated into surrender simply because someone assumed our peace meant weakness. Vesic considered this for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I will relay this message, though I suspect it will not be received well by those who sent us. That is not our concern, my father replied. Our concern is the safety of this colony. and we have made that safety clear today." The commander turned to leave, then paused, looking back at my father with something that might have been respect, or perhaps simply surprise. "Your people showed remarkable restraint today. We expected to face either helpless civilians or overwhelming force. Instead, we found something in between, controlled, precise, and merciful. That is, not what we expected from humans." My father allowed a small, tired smile. "Then perhaps your reports need updating." The shuttle departed minutes later, followed shortly by the 3 Dominion ships, which rose slowly into the sky and vanished into the stars, leaving behind nothing but disturbed clouds and a valley slowly returning to its natural quiet. I stood there, watching the sky long after the ships had disappeared, trying to process everything that had happened in the span of a single afternoon. The wheat fields swayed gently around me, the wind carrying the scent of harvest and evening approaching, as if nothing had happened at all. But everything had changed. That evening, the entire colony gathered in the town square, not in celebration, but in quiet reflection. My father stood before the crowd, and for the first time, spoke openly about what our colony truly was, a fact that many of the younger generation, like myself, had never fully understood. "Today we were tested," he said, his voice carrying easily across the silent crowd. "And today, we proved that peace does not mean weakness. It means choice. We chose this life, this quiet, simple existence, not because we were incapable of anything else, but because we understood, better than most, the true cost of conflict. We hoped we would never need to reveal what lies beneath our fields, beneath our homes, beneath the calm surface of this world. But when that choice was taken from us, we responded not with anger, not with excessive force, but with exactly what was necessary to protect what we hold dear, and not one measure more." He looked around at the crowd, at the faces of neighbors and friends who had spent decades keeping a secret that had finally come to light. "We are farmers," he continued. "We are teachers, bakers, engineers, parents. But we are also, when necessary, defenders of this life we have built. Let today be a lesson, not just to those who attacked us, but to ourselves as well. Peace is not something given to us. It is something we protect, every single day, through the choices we make." The crowd was silent for a long moment, absorbing his words. Then, slowly, people began to return to their homes, their conversations quiet but steady, processing a truth about their own community that many had never known. I found Thomas later that night, sitting on the porch of his house, staring up at the stars with a distant expression. "Did you know?" I asked, sitting down beside him, "about all of this?" He nodded slowly. "My grandfather told me when I turned 18. It's tradition here, passed down quietly, generation after generation. You learn the truth when you're old enough to understand the responsibility that comes with it." "Why didn't anyone tell me sooner?" Thomas glanced at me, his expression thoughtful. "Would you have wanted to grow up knowing this, carrying this, or would you rather have had a normal childhood, free to believe the wheat fields were all there was?" I thought about it for a long moment, remembering the countless afternoons I had spent running through those fields, carefree and unaware, believing our world was simply forgotten by the wider galaxy, safe in its insignificance. I said slowly, "I understand now why they wanted it that way." Over the following weeks, life on Meridian's Rest slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. The harvest continued, the town square filled once again with the sounds of daily life, and the monument on the hill, though no longer a complete secret, returned to being simply a part of the landscape, its true purpose now understood, but rarely spoken of openly. Word of what had happened on our colony eventually reached other human worlds, and I later learned that similar stories existed elsewhere, quiet colonies scattered across human space, each hiding their own version of the same truth beneath peaceful exteriors. It seemed that Earth's lesson from the Unity conflict had been carried further than I ever imagined, a quiet network of communities who had chosen peace deliberately, while never fully setting aside the ability to protect it. I often think back to that afternoon, to the moment the sky rippled and the ships appeared, to the calm, steady resolve I saw in every person around me, people I had known my entire life as simple farmers and shopkeepers. I think about the message my father sent to Commander Vesic, and the quiet dignity with which our colony handled a threat that could have easily become something far more devastating. We were never the easy target the Dominion believed us to be. We were something far more complex, a people who had chosen gentleness not out of weakness, but out of hard-earned wisdom, carrying within us both the memory of conflict and the determination to never let it define us again. The galaxy attacked a peaceful human colony that day, believing us defenseless, believing our quiet existence meant we had nothing to protect ourselves with. They forgot who we truly were, and I suspect after that day, they never will again.